It's no surprise Mike Evans is on our love list as well for pass catchers here. This one's pretty simple, Jay. Bucks playing to win, very important. He needs 85 yards for his 11th consecutive 1,000-yard season. You know dang well Baker Mayfield has that at the top of his mind.
Yeah, so Mike Evans' receiving prop on DraftKings is 95.5, but the over has been back to minus 130. I still think that is good. I think that this is one of those things where, look, they're going to play to win the game first, obviously, though that is kind of correlated with Mike Evans, getting yards, which will help them win the game. But even then, I think they will go out of their way to feed him the ball because it is a monumental streak. They've got 11 consecutive seasons with 1,000 yards. Like, that's insane. And so this is the defining statistical trait of Mike Evans' career. Yeah. And I think they will want to get him that. I would be betting on him to go 100 plus.
Yeah, this feels like a no-brainer here, Matthew, unless the Saints just come out in a very petty way and throw 3 guys in front of him and said, please, anybody else beat us.
They could try, I suppose,
Might
as
not
well.
work.
But so far this year, they've allowed the 5th most yards to opposing wide receivers. In previous years, the Saints have had Marshawn Lattimore, who's had kind of Mike Evans' number. But Marshawn Lattimore no longer in the Saints. I'm not sure he's on the Commanders. I was told he's on the Commanders. I've yet to actually see him play, except for a couple of plays against Philadelphia where he got burned by A.J. Brown. But that's another story. I will also say this, Jay, to your point about the record, it is like kind of the defining record of Mike Evans. When Mike Evans' Hall of Fame eligibility is brought up, that'll be the first stat that somebody mentions, like, this is why this guy should be in the Hall of Fame. So I think they will do everything. Baker Mayfield's addressed it publicly, saying he's aware of it, that, they want to stay within the offense, but certainly when there's an opportunity to get the ball to Mike Evans, Baker Mayfield's going to take it. This is also interesting, and I bet you anything, because Baker Mayfield's a player's guy. Like, guys love playing with Baker, for Baker. He probably knows this, that Mike Evans needs not only 85 yards, but also 5 catches. If he gets 5 catches and 85 yards in this game, he earns a $3 million bonus. So I would take over 85 yards and over 5 catches for him in this game for sure. Should have a big game.
A guy that was often given the Mike Evans comparison coming out of college is next up on the love list for us, and that is Drake London. He's got the Panthers. Matthew, this one's pretty simple. 2 starts for Michael Penix so far in his young career. Drake London, 34% target share in those 2 Penix starts.
Yeah, Michael Penix is no idiot, right? He knows that if he wants to bring that big Penix energy, if he wants people around the league to have Penix envy, then, he's got to get the ball to his best ball players, and that's Drake London, right? He's the best guy on that team in the receiving game, and since week 12, it's a good matchup, too. No team in the NFL has allowed more touchdowns to opposing wide receivers than the Carolina Panthers, so I think Penix will bring the heat. I think there will be, just a lot of looks to Drake London, Detective Drake London from Michael Penix. It's worth noting, Detective Drake London did come on our air. He did promise a bird up. We haven't gotten it yet. Maybe here in week 18 we will.
Yeah. Effortlessly smooth inclusion of your Penix envy, Penix energy bits there, Matthew. Just absolutely seamless. Definitely not prepared material at all, just comes out organically. Have you been surprised how Drake London kind of has been used in the NFL? Because to me, he's more like Cooper Kupp-ish, the way that he's been used. It's a lot more short stuff, a lot more slot stuff. He just never breaks like 70-yard touchdown, like deep passes like that.
Well, I think he was an underrated route runner. You look at a guy and go, 6'5", like he's really just going to be out there high pointing the ball. And I thought his movement skills were underrated. But it is interesting, Jay. Kirk Cousins really couldn't push the ball down the field. So you kind of throw that one out the door. And then you look at the quarterbacks he played with before that. I mean, who's really successfully doing that? So I think now is the time where I look at Drake London's floor, everything you say, and I go, okay, that's okay. Now with a quarterback that has an absolute howitzer. I mean, Penix legitimately has a top 6 arm in the NFL. Maybe you start to see some of those opportunities. I think also for Darnell Mooney, you'll see some of those opportunities if they could start to connect. Our next pass catcher here, guys, Sam LaPorta is our tight end on the love list. He is tight end 5 in points per game since week 13. Jay, it was kind of a disappointing fantasy season for a long period of time for LaPorta. But not only has he gotten it going, but this offense is just a high-flying, high-powered offense under Ben Johnson that you knew was a matter of time.
Yeah, definitely. And obviously this is one of the few games where both teams are highly incentivized to win nationally with the 1 seed at stake. So going to be no issues about LaPorta's usage. He's plus 125 on DraftKings to score a touchdown. And so he has finally kind of turned the corner. I expect that will continue in a matchup with everything on the line.
Matthew, if you were lucky enough to make the fantasy playoffs with LaPorta, it finally paid off for you at the end of this year.
He's had 14 or more fantasy points in 4 of the past 5 games. He's had 5 straight weeks, a couple of weeks going into the playoffs and then the fantasy playoffs. He's had 5 straight weeks finishing as a top 10 tight end. Maybe not the number 1 tight end you drafted him as, but certainly there's been a lot of production as well. 7 straight games with 6 or more targets, a 20% target share in that span for one of, if not the hottest offense in the NFL. So, yeah, I have Sam LaPorta at tight end 4 this week. He should be busy in a game that we expect to have a lot of fireworks. I think it's the highest over-under on the slate. Last I looked, it was like 53.5.
Some others receiving votes. Jameson Williams, shout out to Lawrence Jackson, who had Jameson Williams anytime touchdown for Monday Night Football. That cashed. Adam Thielen, Jacoby Myers, Marvin Mims, Jonnu Smith, and Chig Okonkwo. Matthew, this list is very tailored to Live at Noon on the Cock. I'm noticing a trend.
Well, just, people that have produced for me, I want them to produce for other people as well. I just want other people to enjoy the good fortune that I have. And Chig Okonkwo, who motivated by Big Show's sneaky tight end hoarding, but perhaps offended that he wasn't one of the tight ends that Big Show tried to hoard from me, went out and had his 3rd straight game with double-digit fantasy points. It's now 3 straight. He's had a 28% target share over the last 3 games with Mason Rudolph under center. And again, he gets the Houston Texans, who we expect to bench their starters for at least the second half. You mentioned Jonnu Smith on that list as well, as long as we're talking tight ends. In his last 3 starts with Tyler Huntley, he's averaging over 15 fantasy points per game. He has not been slowed down by the change in quarterback. Marvin Mims, like we talked about him the other day, Connor, as well, but Marvin Mims continues to find ways onto the field and earn more targets in the Sean Payton offense. It took longer than we constantly thought, but set at least 60 receiving yards in 3 of the last 4. Obviously, had the acrobatic touchdown. They're looking for him in the red zone. Season high 25% target share last week for Marvin Mims in a game that Denver Broncos not only need to win, but we expect them to be playing against the Chiefs' backups. Mahomes, it's already been announced he will not play. You mentioned Jacoby Myers, at least 9 targets in 5 of the last 6. We know the Raiders are going to try to play. Adam Thielen's been nothing short of phenomenal since he returned in Week 12. Right, wide receiver 17 on a fantasy points per game basis. He's had a massive target share, 25% under Bryce Young in 4 straight games. And then Jameson Williams, who Jay just mentioned as well. He's it's a game that we think to have a lot of points. This is a game that'll be Detroit, Minnesota is a game that'll be on NBC and Peacock Sunday night. A company man, at least a 20% target share for J-Mo in 5 of the past 6 games. It's worth noting that the Minnesota Vikings, their opponent on Sunday, have allowed the most receptions and the 3rd most yards on deep passes. You saw sort of the hook and ladder with Jameson Williams last week against San Francisco. It is crazy to me that they keep, in games in which they're blowing out and games that don't really matter, they still pull out all these trick plays. And you're like, shouldn't you save some of this? But I don't know. They keep doing it. So kudos to Ben Johnson, who Ben Johnson also has big Penix energy, it seems.
Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and Rotoworld.com, and I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched, or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest Rotoworld fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.